I was wrong about the Cassian Andor show. In my last review called Andor is a Bad Show, I was reviewing episode 1 and my plan was to review each episode one by one, even though they all came out with the first 3 on the first day. I just wanted to go through each one individually and give my reviews of them. Episode 1 was not good. It was so boring. It was not Star Wars at all. It was just not good acting, not good set pieces. Nothing about it was interesting or attention catching in any way. And honestly, that first episode was so bad that it made me lose complete interest in the rest of the entire show. If I did not have a YouTube channel, I would have stopped after episode 1. But because I have this YouTube channel where I make so many Star Wars videos, I figured I'd have to at least give the rest of the show a try. So today I sat down and I watched episode 2, episode 3, and episode 4. And since my last video so harshly criticizing episode 1 is my most controversial video I've ever made, and I got a lot of comments about how people disagree, I think a lot of you might be pleased to hear that the next 3 episodes have actually managed to change my mind on the show overall. I still stand by episode 1 being really bad, really boring, and not at all Star Wars. And I think episode 2 also was really bad, really boring, bad acting, bad set pieces, not at all Star Wars. Those 2 episodes I can completely do without. There's only a few moments that are actually interesting or good or stand out to me in any way. But episode 3 is where things really kick off, which I assume is something Disney maybe even knew, which might be part of why they released all 3 on the first day. I have no idea why episodes 1 and 2 weren't just reworked to make them as good as episodes 3 and 4, but maybe there's something behind the scenes on that. Or maybe they're just not my style at all. Nevertheless, episode 3 was actually pretty good, and then episode 4 was really genuinely great. So I'm actually looking forward to the future episodes, and I'll definitely keep watching the show and seeing how things go. As I said in my previous video, my problems with episode 1 were it didn't feel like Star Wars, it didn't have an interesting story, it was so slow, so boring, nothing happening, bad acting, no real interesting set pieces of any kind. And not much story going on. Definitely not much story connected to the larger story of Star Wars. And that continued as a problem through episode 1 and episode 2, and even the beginning of episode 3. But by the time we get to the end of episode 3, the show just takes a complete 180-degree turn, and it's just entirely a different show. Episode 3 literally ends with all of these Star Wars elements suddenly just coming up out of nowhere and literally going around destroying all of the original stuff of Andor from the first 2 episodes. All the characters that I didn't like, or I thought the actors were bad, or I thought the storylines were bland, all of them ended up dead or just pushed out of the story completely by the end of episode 3. As the new incoming characters that are way more interesting, way better actors, way more related to the rest of Star Wars, just come in, destroy everything, grab Andor, and swoop him out into the larger Star Wars story. It makes me think that all the problems of episode 1 and episode 2, and even the beginning of episode 3 that I had commented on and thought about, were actually intentional on some level. It's like the writers wanted to distinguish Andor's world from the rest of Star Wars, so that it's like he's being pulled from his world into the actual Star Wars universe almost. And I'll admit that effect was really interesting to see, how everything was so distant from Star Wars, no Imperials, just these weird, annoying corporate whatever security guys. No real Star Wars vehicles, just these kind of knockoffs. No real Star Wars droids, just these kind of knockoffs, maybe a gonk droid occasionally. No real intense Star Wars theming or anything special, just kind of these generic sci-fi elements and bland attempts at grittiness, boring characters and their melodrama, all of that. It was like all of that was episode 1, and it's almost set up purposely to distinguish itself from normal Star Wars. And then episode 3 comes with the rebels showing up, Andor getting sucked into it, everything just being destroyed and replaced. And all of those Andor unique elements that I didn't like were just suddenly gone from the story and just suddenly replaced with actual really, really good, interesting Star Wars content. We suddenly have rebels, we suddenly have Imperials, we suddenly have great action scenes, awesome, interesting dialogue, strong personalities, the rebellion, blaster fights, actual Star Wars style ships. Witty banter, interesting tension, you don't know what's actually going to happen. And then through episodes 3 and 4, we even have the actual Imperials who feel like Imperials and look like Imperials and act like Imperials coming in and just totally wrecking and making fun of the corporate knockoff security team and just totally taking away that cheesy hero moment of the guy trying to stand up and exposing it for how stupid it was, which was something I complained about in the first episode. It's almost like the Empire and the Rebellion show up at the end of episode 3 and the start of episode 4 to save the show from all the things that I had hated from the first 2 episodes. Suddenly we have interesting planning scenes, great technology, everything feels and looks like Star Wars, amazing actors, really well-written dialogue, all the tension, all the humor, all the intrigue, everything looks like Star Wars. We have Mon Mothma, we have TIE fighters, just everything really came together in episodes 3 and 4 to the point that if I ever show the show to someone else or I rewatch it for myself, I would definitely skip episodes 1 and 2, just go off the recap and start at episode 3. I have no idea what Disney was doing here or what the writers were doing here. I feel like it was a failed attempt to make that transition really, really intense. But for what it's worth, episodes 1 and 2 of Andor were awful. But episodes 3 and 4 were really, really good. Better than the Kenobi show, in my opinion. So I'm excited to see what they do going forward, and I hope they really stick to this stuff from episode 3 and 4, and they don't try to go back to the old stuff. So instead of going over anything from episode 1 or 2, I'm just going to skip right to the end of episode 3 and episode 4, and talk about the good things and the amazing work that they did there. They did a really good job of showing how the Empire destroys everything and corrupts it, but in kind of this controlled Imperial way, like they should, instead of just, in the Obi-Wan show, how they show the Empire coming in and just kind of wiping everything out and leaving it as this desolate place where some stormtroopers patrol. In this show, you actually see more of the Empire coming in, destroying everything, and then rebuilding the society in the form of the Empire to serve the Empire, which is what they do. So that's a really, really interesting, good thing to show. Especially in the 4th episode with the things on Aldhani, for example, them relocating all of the locals to Imperial housing and just completely destroying the local culture to replace it with this new kind of shipping center, all of those things. It's really, really well done. And all the new characters they've brought in for episodes 3 and 4 have just been really, really good. Like, for example, I'm not great with the names, but that new rebel guy who comes in and picks up Andor, that actor is, of course, fantastic in all the things he's in, and he just really sells the show on his own, and is what got me invested in it again once I started watching episode 3. And so all of his little pieces of rebellion advice to Andor, and just the way he interacts with him, and his confidence, and the way he explains this whole situation to Andor, all of that was just really, really beautifully written and interesting to watch. And then it's our first real time to actually get to see Coruscant again, other than Order 66, since Revenge of the Sith. So we have actually the skyline of Coruscant, the city, the planet, Mon Mothma, senators, drivers, all the trains, the Imperials, everything is just really, really nice to see again. And it's all the stuff I wanted from this show from the trailers. So I'm glad that it finally shows up and we're away from the kind of pathetic grunge nothingness of episodes 1 and 2. And especially the aspects of Mon Mothma just being always watched by the Imperials in all these subtle ways, like them replacing her driver and sending some Imperial diplomats to her dinner party and sort of influencing her husband and things like that. That was all just really well thought out, smart, interesting political intrigue, which is exactly something that Star Wars has always been good at, even if people don't like the political scenes so much. They're still an important part of Star Wars, and they're part of my favorite. And of course, the actress of young Mon Mothma is just as fantastic as ever. It's a real shame that her scenes got cut from Revenge of the Sith, because it's one of the best parts of the novelization, and she did a good job in Rogue One. So it's really great to see her in this more prominent role in an actual TV show where she gets to be Mon Mothma as one of the main characters and go through all of that political rebellion drama. And even the stuff on Aldhani with Andor being distributed to this small rebel group as a mercenary to help them with their mission, all of that was done way better than I expected it to be when I first heard about it. For example, all the characters are very unique with strong personalities, and they mention their names enough that even after just this one episode, I actually remember a few of them already. And they're unique enough that when I see them or hear something they're doing, it makes sense and I recognize it right away. All of the rebels on Aldhani that we've only met for one episode already feel way more impactful and have way more depth than most of the characters from the Kenobi show, even some of the main characters. So that's a great sign for the future of Andor. And then the plan they make is very detailed and interesting, and I like that they don't show it all in one episode, so you have a whole episode of just build-up and character interactions, character development, and just very detailed planning of the mission so that you know for the next episode what to expect, what to look out for, where it could go wrong, and it adds so much tension to the story. And of course, in these later episodes, they start bringing out a lot more Easter eggs that are actually really well done, like for example, mentioning Mon Mothma's home planet and the different culture and history from other expanded universe books and stories. It's all just really well put together here. And even the internal political intrigue of the different Imperial officers kind of fighting for position and arguing with each other and trying to challenge each other and dealing with their boss is fascinating to watch. It's basically what the Kenobi show tried to do with the Inquisitors, except actually done well, and in an interesting way with interesting characters and things that make sense. And also, one of my old critiques from the first video about episodes 1 and 2 was that the dialogue just felt really fake and scripted. Everything felt unnatural, and it felt like the actors were just standing around taking turns saying the lines they'd memorized. But in episode 3 and episode 4, I don't know exactly what changed. Maybe just so many new, really good actors coming in, but especially for episode 4, just the quality of dialogue delivery just increased by 10 times. They're all super professional, they cut each other off a little bit, they look like they're actually reacting, they all have these very subtle body movements that show you what they're feeling. Like for example, when Mon Mothma finishes her meeting with the rebel and she goes back into her vehicle to go home, that moment where she kind of takes a deep breath and then tries to loosen her collar a bit just to show she's uncomfortable, that's a really good moment. And even when they're on Aldhani and introducing Andor to the new rebels and the rebel leader is trying to vouch for him but doesn't really like him, you can see she keeps looking at the ground, just being nervous and uncomfortable with the whole situation. All of the acting and the direction and the writing just jumped up by an infinite degree at the end of episode 3 and throughout all of episode 4. And even the sound quality and just sound effects took a huge boost as well. It's amazing how much the quality differs between episodes 1, 2, and 3, 4. But you can hear the TIE fighters, you can hear the speeders, you can hear all the comlinks and the binoculars and everything. It just sounds like Star Wars. So to everyone who commented not liking my video or disagreeing with me about my critiques of episode 1, thank you for encouraging me to keep trying the show. I'm glad I have this YouTube channel so that I actually have a reason and motivation to keep getting through to pass episode 1 and 2, so that I can see all the actual really good stuff from episodes 3 and 4 and keep watching the show to see 5, 6, and beyond. But that brings me to why episode 1 and 2 were so bad they almost turned me off the whole show in the first place. I think Disney kind of miscalculated with that. I mean, I think the original plan of the writers was to have this sort of more bland, more gritty, slow burn, kind of boring, not very Star Wars feeling show for 2.5 episodes, and then suddenly pull Andor out, put him into the rebellion, bring in the Empire and everything, and just kick everything up to level 10. And I'll admit, when I did get to that part, it did feel like a huge breath of relief, and it suddenly just got really engaging, and everything made sense, and it was really impactful. But 2.5 episodes of that nothingness from the beginning was way too long. I think if they had done it as, like, the first episode was that style, and then ending with the Rebel coming in and everything starting to kick off, that would have been way better paced. Which is why I recommend just watching the recap of 1 and 2 and then watching the full episode 3 to get that kind of effect, where everything is sort of slow and boring and kind of a little gritty, mostly just bland, and then suddenly everything kicks off at the end and gets you excited to watch the rest of the show. But anyway, for all of you who like Andor, congratulations. I like it too now, and I'm excited to see where they go from here. I will continue watching the show, I'll continue saying my thoughts about it in videos, and I hope that they really stick to their guns and keep everything as high quality as episode 3 and especially episode 4 were, because I do not want to go back to that style of episodes 1 and 2. So anyway, I hope that you like the show, or if you still don't like the show after episode 3 and 4, let me know. If you haven't seen them yet, definitely give them a try. And if you liked episodes 1 and 2, then definitely let me know why in the comments, because maybe they just weren't for me. But regardless, the ending is exciting and great, and I'm excited to see where they go from here, so let's all watch it together. Click a video on screen for more Star Wars analysis, or until next time, this is Deep Dive, signing off.